Boa tarde.
Boa tarde. Tudo bem?
Tudo bem.
So I'll be studying in English. Also, we're already on live. So welcome, Dr. Catarina Vila-Pouca. Guys, we're happy today on starting our fourth and last day of programmation with Dr. Catarina Vila-Pouca. She's a postdoctoral fellow at the Function and Evolutive Pharmacology Center in France. Her research focuses mostly on understanding ecological and evolutionary drivers of variation in animal behavior and cognitive abilities. So we welcome you, Dr. Catarina. Thank you very much for being here, and the talk is yours.
Thank you. So I assume. Can you see my screen now? I'm not sure which one are you seeing. Can you hear me?
Yes, I could see it, but then you got it off.
But which screen did you see? The presenter view or the... Did you see my notes or the full screen?
The full screen.
So now you see the full screen.
Yeah, with your notes, I can see like the...
now you see my text.
PowerPoint. The
So
whole
now it's
PowerPoint.
good? Yeah. Now can you see just the screen or no?
No.
I don't know why it's not working. And now?
Still the PowerPoint side view.
Okay. So now you can see just the screen now? Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Thank you.
You can start.
So, boa tarde a todos. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, especially this being the last day of the conference, and it's also a Saturday. And before I start, I would also like to thank the organizers of the conference, first for giving me the opportunity of being here and sharing my work with you, but also for all the hard work in putting together this very good international conference with many interesting topics and speakers, and for organizing sessions also in English and in Portuguese. So well done to the organizers. And today I'm going to talk about fish and sharks and what they might be thinking about in their daily lives. And I would like to just introduce myself before I start. My name is Catarina, I'm Portuguese, and I studied at the University of Porto during my undergrad and master's. And for my master thesis, I worked on the movement dynamics of blue sharks. I then moved to Macquarie University to Sydney, Australia, where I worked on learning abilities of these funky-looking endemic sharks. And after my PhD, I did a postdoc at Stockholm University in Sweden and also at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. And I was working on cognition and brain evolution in guppies, freshwater fish species. And currently, I am in France, where I did a second postdoc in Montpellier and also in collaboration with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama, looking at mate choice behavior in heliconius butterflies. And today I'm mostly going to talk about my PhD and first postdoc. And although I've worked on a few different topics, my main research interests are to examine how and why animals differ in some behavioral and cognitive traits at the individual level and also between populations and species. And I'm also interested in taking an ecological approach to cognition research, which means designing tasks to test individuals in situ in the wild in their natural environments. And I'll talk a bit today about the work that I've done on these topics and on these interests. So before I start, I would like to ask your opinion a bit later on. Let's see if this works. So I just want to test that this poll is working before I really start giving my talk. So in the next slide, you should see a poll, and you'll be able to vote with your phone. So either scanning the QR code. I'm not sure how many people are watching the session and how this is going to work. But if you can scan the QR code with your phone, or you can just go at the website that is, I don't know if you can see the mouse, slido.com, and then just enter this number. There's a blue bar at the top of the website, and then you enter this number, and we should get some answers, and we'll see if this is working. I'll just wait a minute, and if it's not working, we'll just move on.
Wait a sec, I'm getting in.
Yeah. I just wanted to get to test this for now, because after that I'm going to be talking already about the fish and the topics, and I didn't want to have the poll not working halfway. So everyone already kind of knows how to do it. But yeah, since it's a Saturday, maybe also not so many people are watching live. I should have brought my phone. I also dressed up. Okay, so we see it's working, at least. We can see later how it goes with the real poll. So I'm going to move on. So back to talking about behavior and cognition. So when we think about complex behaviors and cognition, most people will think of primates or dogs or pigs or some birds like crows and parrots. And I think you can all agree with me that they are quite smart and they can learn lots of things about the world and also easily learn things that we teach them. But where do fish and sharks stand compared to mammals and birds? Are they also capable of learning things about their world and things that we teach them? And what kind of things do they learn? So here is where I like to get a feeling for what you guys think. So I created some options for things that mammals and birds do, and maybe fish as well. And I'd like you to vote on the things that you either know or you have a feeling that fish can do. So yeah, same thing. You can just scan the QR code. Some very informed people, or you think fish can count and learn by watching others? We will see about that. Okay, more people are voting. I'm just gonna wait a little bit more, but otherwise we move on. So learning to associate an object with food is quite easy learning ability, let's say. Easier learning ability, spatial learning, learning to navigate. Everyone thinks also that fish can do it. Learn by watching others, so social learning, not so much. Counting also not so much, but some people think yes. So we will find out. We're getting some more answers. Okay. Okay, so everyone thinks they're good on spatial abilities, but then the others not so much. Well, thank you for voting. We get a sense of what everyone thinks about fish and learning abilities. And then I get a feeling also of what you already know and maybe some of the things that are going to be news for you. So the poll will be open. So later, if you want to vote, I can put this up again, but I'm going to move on now. Thank you. So first, I just want to say, why does it matter to look at fish cognition? Why do we care? What kinds of things they learn? So on one hand, many people are interested in comparative cognition, so looking at evolutionary origins of learning abilities, comparing fish with other species. Also, because vertebrates have different brain arrangements, brain anatomy. It's also interesting to look at how different brains solve the same tasks. And nowadays, there's more and more interest in studying fish behavior and cognition because of animal welfare. So fish are on the top 3 in most common pets and also research subjects, and they're often kept in very barren tanks, sometimes alone. And so it's interesting to know what kinds of things they like to do and they can do, so we can give them some enrichment and we can keep them in better conditions. And so one of the things that I asked you was whether fish can associate an object with a reward, and not everyone thought they can do this. So this is a kind of simple learning ability called associative learning, and this happens when there's something that is neutral, a stimulus that doesn't mean anything to the animal. For example, a leash. If you have dogs, this is something that dogs learn super quickly. If they like to go for a walk, that when you grab the leash, it means they're going for a walk. So going for a walk is a reward for them, and the leash in the beginning doesn't mean anything, but they quickly start to associate leash with going for a walk. So how do we know if fish can do this? So one way of testing this is to see if they can associate objects or colors with getting some food. So I hope the video plays. So there is a tank with a fish here, and they live in this tank. Oh, the fish is here, sorry. They live in this tank, there's some plants, sand, and they have some hides in the back. And then in the front, they have the experimental chamber. And there's this plate with holes. And in these 2 holes, we put some food. But in one of them, the disc is stuck, so the fish cannot get to the food. And only one of them, they can push it to open the hole and get to the food. And you see here, there's a door. So there is a transparent door. So this fish is looking at the 2 options, and then she's going to approach. And when the door lifts, she can make the choice. And she can push the disc to get the food. And so it's quite easy to train them. So fish do show associative learning. So they learn objects of certain colors that give them food. We can train them with shapes. And how quickly do they learn? So it's very variable depending on different individuals. So we are looking here at Poecilia reticulata, the guppy. And you see some individuals, some fish are really fast. So in 5 to 7 attempts, they've already learned it. Some fish are really slow. They need almost 40 repetitions. So you see huge variation, but they do learn it, and many of them very quickly. And we trained different species and different populations, and you see there's quite a lot of variation. Some are quite slow, but overall, pretty much everyone learns this, and they learn it almost as fast as birds in this kind of task. And how do they use associative learning in the wild? So they learn things about their environment. They associate colors, shapes, or motion, for example, for danger of predators, or they associate colors and sizes or even shapes for prey, food items that maybe are seasonal or a new prey item in their environment. They can also associate objects and shapes, new things with danger. They can show a bit neurophobia and then learn whether things are dangerous or not. And so it's learning ability that is useful for them in the wild. We can train them to something a little bit more difficult. So these are the same results in two species that I just shown you. So they learned to go for the red to get food. So after these fish are trained, what we do is we swap which one gives them food. So now this fish that had learned to go for red, she has to go for yellow to get the food. So she has to inhibit and kind of forget what she just learned. So she has to inhibit the behavior and she has to learn a new association with yellow. So it's a little bit more difficult. They need more attempts. So you see now fish that were taking on average around 15 trials. Now they're taking around 30 trials. The antlers guppies, the other species, are also almost doubled the number of repetitions of trials they need, but they also learn this. And so they show quite good learning abilities in this type of shape and color associations. And reversal learning in the wild is especially important, and you will see these more often, or fish will learn more quickly in environments that are more dynamic or seasonal or constantly changing, because this type of flexibility allows them to quickly unlearn outdated cues and learn new ones. And so it's a behavior that might not be optimal in all conditions. So in an environment that is very stable, maybe it's not needed to be so behaviorally flexible compared to environments that are very dynamic. We also talked about spatial learning, learning to navigate, and everyone thought fish are pretty good, and they are. We can train them in the lab, sharks as well, by the way. We can train them in the lab. For example, there's a shark that has a wall with 2 doors, and they have to learn if they swim through door number 1, there's food. Door number 2, no food. And we can build very simple mazes like this, or we can give them more complicated navigational mazes. And globally, they are quite good at learning these types of tasks to get a bit of food. But you see now these sharks, they're a bit slow. So it took them 15 days with 3 repetitions per day. So that would be 45 repetitions. So these sharks, they were juvenile sharks. It took them a little bit to learn, but they did learn it. We also did a study, both in the lab and in the wild, looking at cognitive maps, so whether fish have a mental map of their environment. And we looked at this with a specific behavior that is jumping. So I don't know if you know, but guppies, this fish that is here, this video is not mine. I just found it on YouTube and it's quite easy to see. But you see that there is water, it's a tank, and this person has a fish kind of half in, half out of the tank. And when guppies are in a small body of water like this, they jump out to escape. So this happens, for example, in Trinidad where they live. Sometimes the river starts drying up and they get caught in a pond. And if they stay there, they're going to die because the pond will dry out. And so they are able to jump out. And what we did in the lab was we created this tank that had 2 areas that were deep and 2 areas that were very shallow. So what you see here is the side view. So the shallow areas are like this, full of sand, and the deep areas are deep with water, no? And in the middle, we had a little container with water. And so, and first, we let the fish swim freely in the whole tank for 4 days. And we were raising the water level for part of the day so they could swim also in the shallow area and in the deep area. And then we would drain the tank a little bit up to a point where they could not swim anymore. So this shallow area would be dry and then the deep area would still be with water. So the fish were experiencing this fluctuation of high water level and low water level. And for 4 days they could swim around and they could memorize the tank if they would do it. And then on the 5th day, we had the tank drained, so they had the shallow areas were almost dry, and we placed the fish, each fish alone, in these small containers. So similar to what you saw with the fish being in the hand. So it's very shallow and very small container, and the only way for them to be out of the situation is to jump out. And we had a camera filming, and we recorded where they landed after they jumped. And as you can see here, only 4 fish jumped to shallow areas, and 16 of the 20 fish jumped into a deep area. So the fish, when it's placed in this small container, it has a spatial awareness. It remembers the map of the tank where they were swimming around, and they can aim where to jump, and they remember where the deep areas are, so they don't get trapped in the shallow areas. And I should say no fish were trapped. The ones that jumped in the shallow areas were rescued immediately. But this is just to show that they did memorize the spatial map of the tank, and they have very good spatial memory. The other question was, can they learn from others? Can they learn from watching what another fish or what another shark is doing? Some of you were skeptical, but indeed, fish show very good social learning abilities, and some sharks as well. So this is the same setup that you saw before with the 2 doors, but you see now there's 2 sharks in the tank. So what we did was, some sharks we trained alone, and these are the results that you've seen already. And then other sharks were in pairs in the tank. Some of these pairs, they were both new to the experiment. So none of them knew what to do, but they were just in a pair. And some of these pairs had 1 shark that was new and 1 shark that we already trained. So it was a demonstrator, a shark that already knew what to do. And we wanted to see how fast these sharks from these different groups learned and how many were able to learn the task. And so typically this is what you see. The demonstrator goes really fast, and then sometimes the naive shark will follow. And they both get food. And so what we found, so these are the results that you already saw, the sharks that were alone. They took around 15 days to learn. The sharks that were in pairs, but both naive, were much quicker. And the sharks that were paired with a trained demonstrator, so the ones that were really observing, they also learn really fast. But what you can already see is there's a lot of points here and not so many here. So what happened was, in the duration of our experiment, almost all of the observer sharks were able to learn the task. In this case, within 15 days, we set the cutoff point. And very few sham observers were able to learn. So you can see a big difference in, if we give them a short amount of time to learn, in how many can learn. And so this shows that they are watching what other sharks are doing, and they can benefit from this social learning. So in the wild, social learning is used because they can learn new behaviors a lot faster. They don't need to go through trial and error. And this also allows fish and sharks to transmit some adaptive knowledge between them. So for example, migration routes. Something else that I asked you whether fish could do was whether they could count. And most of you thought no. Someone was very well informed or likes fish a lot. So the ability to distinguish size, quantity, and to count. And actually, yes, fish and sharks can do this. So for example, what we did was we trained these sharks to touch cards on a wall to get a food reward. And then, so at the beginning, they had to touch a white card. Then they had to touch cards with different shapes. And then once they learned that, we introduced these cards. So some cards had 3 dots with different sizes, and some cards had 6 dots, and they had to learn to go for 6 dots. The sharks took some weeks. They were a bit slow to learn it, but they did learn that only larger quantity gave them a reward. Guppies and other freshwater fish can also do this. They can learn about the quantity of dots in the card. They can learn about specific numbers in the card. They learn size, so you can train them to pick the largest or the smallest. So they have good quantitative abilities. And in the wild, these quantitative abilities are, of course, important. For example, if you think about food, they want to choose the bigger or more food items if they can. For fish, sometimes they need to join the larger shoals. So some of these tasks with fish, instead of showing them cards, you can also give them a choice between 2 shoals at opposite sides of the tank with different numbers. So a very small shoal, let's say 4 fish, and one with 8 or 10 fish, and you see which one they choose. And usually fish prefer to choose the larger one for predation protection. And so you can see whether they are able to distinguish these abilities and if they always join the larger one. And we know they also use number and size to pick their battles wisely. So they assess the rivals and they can assess the size or the number of rivals in a territory, for example, and things like this. And so just as a reminder, this is a slide that I've already shown you. This type of work allows us not only to find out what fish are capable of, which for me is already interesting in itself, but also take a comparative look across taxa, also look at functional homology in vertebrate brains, and make some recommendations for animal welfare of fish in captivity. But in addition to this, also what I really like and what I've been doing is that now that we have standard assays to test fish in certain tasks, we can use fish as a group to look at broader ecological and evolutionary questions. For example, examining what ecological factors can be driving variation in cognitive ability, to link cognitive and brain evolution. And nowadays, more and more people are looking also at how anthropogenic change can affect behavior and cognition. And we had some nice fish talks here in the conference that addressed some of these topics. For example, there was one presentation on microplastic pollution and effects on fish behavior. And so in my work, I've used fish to look at some big questions. For example, why are some animals smarter than others? And the projects we ran in the lab were specifically looking at predation pressure as a driver of both plasticity and selection in cognitive traits. And this is because in theory, cognition should help animals to avoid or to outsmart their predators. And so if this is true, we would expect that exposure to predation, for example, during early development, will favor cognitive investment and maybe even drive selective investment in some traits that are relevant for surviving a predator. And so, for example, in one experiment, we wanted to test this with guppies. We exposed newborn fish to either perceived predation risk, so chemical cues in the water of a predator and also of predation events, or some fish were exposed to a control situation with no risk for about 4 months while they were developing. And later, all fish were kept in common garden conditions in our lab in a no-risk condition for about a month and a half. And then we tested the adults in a reversal learning task that I showed you before that tests for cognitive flexibility. So the experiment with the discs of different colors. And with this design and with this experiment, we show that exposure to predation risk during early life shapes cognitive investment by increasing cognitive flexibility in the predation-reared fish compared to the controls. So if you remember, these fish were being reared in different conditions, and as they were growing and as they were developing their brains, their neural systems, and their behavioral repertoire. So we found that predation risk does shape cognitive plasticity in this fish. So our results support the predator avoidance hypothesis, and they show for the first time that predation risk during early life does induce cognitive changes, and importantly, that are retained in adulthood. So if you remember, these fish were then kept for a month and a half in no risk conditions. So this was not a direct response to the stress in that moment, but it was a plastic change that was retained in the adults after a long time. And because, as I said, reversal learning, so cognitive flexibility is important in dynamic environments, it's likely that this predation risk induced a selective investment in some traits that are more advantageous when they are exposed to predators. And while I was presenting in the beginning, I was talking a lot about how these abilities are used in the wild, but maybe you're wondering, all my videos were in the lab, so there was a bit of a disconnect. And usually there is, we try to look at abilities that are important for animals in the wild, but it's easier to test them in the lab. It's quite difficult to go out in the wild and test for some of these abilities. You need to test individual fish for multiple times, and you need to have good assays to do that. And captivity may influence the results, so we really wanted to integrate lab and field experiments, and we really wanted to take these cognition experiments into the wild. So recently, we developed a task, so a foraging board, that looks quite similar to the disc experiment that I've shown you in the video. And we really wanted to try to use an assay that was already validated in the lab, but that we could now go into the field in different habitats and look at fish in their natural environment. So we started by testing these with wild-caught fish, but in controlled conditions, to see if this works. And you're going to see they have to push the disc as well, but these discs now have a screw, so the fish cannot just push them out of the board, but they swivel. And you will see that, similar to the lab, these fish learn that they have to peck and push the disc, and it rotates and they can get food. But of course, the example I'm showing here, this is only possible in very shallow rivers or in very specific conditions. So we wanted to create a task that could also be used to be taken to reefs or to ponds or other habitats. So we also created an apparatus to lower these foraging board into other environments, and we test this with sticklebacks. So this is a pond on the university campus. So luckily there was a bridge over, and so we attach this board with a video camera to a structure that we can lower, and this is what you're gonna see. And so you can lower it directly into the pond. And so even if you are in deeper bodies of water, or maybe fish species that don't forage on the ground, they forage in the water column, you can adjust the height, and you can test these different fish. And you can use colors, or you can paint shapes on the discs, or paint dots of different numbers. And so you can test, you can also do spatial tasks if you have the discs in the same positions. And so this will allow us to start looking at different things. And so for now, we just wanted to test the concept and know that this was working. So we look at different populations of fish and different species. And the main result and the important thing is that they can learn, and they show learning curves similar to lab fish. So in just a few presentations, most of the populations are showing very high correct responses. With the guppies, we were also able to identify different individuals from the videos. And so we could go a bit further, and we could see which fish were actually opening the discs, so solving, and which fish were just around trying to steal food. And we saw that only certain fish in each population, so for example, I'm showing here an example of two populations, and you see only two fish in each population were constantly solving, so pushing the disc and opening to get the food. And everyone else that was swimming around, sometimes they would get a bite. They were just trying to steal the food, but they were very few times they were solving the task themselves. So this is interesting because our foraging board can then be used to look at foraging strategy use, who are the innovators and who are the exploiters, and if this is linked to size or sex or maybe dominance hierarchy in the system. We also looked at whether learning speeds, so how fast they were able to learn to push the disc, if this explain which foraging strategy they used, and not surprisingly, yes, it does. So the fish that become solvers, they were the ones that were really fast in learning for the first time to push the disc. And the fish that are really, really slow, really bad, they adopt an exploiter strategy. And so now we really want to go out and test multiple fish species in their natural environment, and to look at populations with varying ecological niches. So we can ask this question of ecological and evolutionary drivers of cognitive abilities in different conditions in situ in the wild. So, for example, the case of the predation, we would like to go to look at populations from high predation, low predation sites, and to compare these, looking at fish in the wild without having to catch them, without the stress of captivity, without using not using populations that have been in the lab for many years, that don't even know what predators are anymore, and that get their food every day at the same time. So we really hope that more and more people also use our setup. And I wrote a blog post as well, both in Portuguese and in English, in Methods in Ecology and Evolution, in their blog, to explain a little bit the process of why and how we created this foraging board, some pilots that didn't work, and how we came up with this design, and also giving some tips. So if anyone is interested, you can also write to me, and please send me some photos if anyone will use this later. I really hope that people start using it more, so we can learn a lot more about what fish are doing in their lives, in their natural environments. And I would also just like to take an opportunity to say that I also really like to taking cognition experiments and fish cognition out to the public. So I really like to do science communication and outreach, particularly if I can do it also in Portuguese or in other languages. And so, for example, if you speak Portuguese and you're interested, I don't know if you know this project, Cartas Consciência. So they will pair you up with a classroom and then with some students or one specific student, and you kind of become pen pals. So you start writing letters with the school children. They will ask you questions about your work and some general questions that they might have. You can exchange some letters over some months with the students, and of course in Portuguese speaking countries, but all over the world. So it's really interesting, and because it's not with a computer, it's a physical letter. It's also a lot more personal. Sometimes they add some drawings, and also it means you're reaching also communities that maybe don't have access to internet all the time, or schools that don't have resources, children that don't have computers at home. And so I really like to join this initiative. I've also been working in the last few years with native scientists. They are only in Europe at the moment, I think, but it's not just in Portuguese. They work in many languages, and the idea is to promote science literacy, but also in a linguistic setup. So the goal, for example, I'm here in France. There's a lot of migrants that speak Portuguese here in France. So I'm organizing science workshops in Portuguese in France for children that are either children of migrants or they are French children that are learning Portuguese. so they can learn a bit more about science, but also they value speaking multiple languages and value what it is to be a migrant, and they meet scientists that are also migrants themselves. I know there's many programs also in Arabic in Europe. There's programs in Spanish, in Italian, in a few languages. And if you are around and there isn't a program yet in your country or in your language, you can sign up to be a coordinator and you can start them. So when I came to the south of France, there were no projects here, so I created a new project here, and now I'm running these workshops. And maybe you already know also Skype a Scientist. So this is in English for children that in English-speaking countries. But the goal is similar to Cartas Conciencia. You are paired up with a teacher and with a classroom, and then you can give a presentation or a virtual talk to these children about a specific topic, about your work or your career, and then they will ask some questions. And it's also very exciting, and usually the kids ask really sweet questions, and I really love it. And then I also try to participate in volunteer events, in promoting research, promoting biodiversity, and also whenever I can, also joining events promoting women in STEM. And with this, I will finish my presentation. And of course, I have many people to thank for assistance, discussions, in all the work that I presented, but highlighting here the main ones in my lab in Australia, in my lab in Sweden, and also here in France. And thank you everyone for being here, for watching, for joining the poll and giving your opinion. And I think we will have time for questions now. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Catarina. Good afternoon. First, I want to say I was a little late, so I apologize, but I managed to follow most of the lecture and wanted to congratulate you because it's an amazing work, really an amazing work. And I have a question, and I want to know if the capability of learning and being trained are affected by the sex of the animals in any way, or being a male and a female don't interfere with that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. Yes, so for many abilities, sex can have an effect, but is mainly if we do see some differences in some behaviors. For example, if some males are more territorial, then maybe they have a larger territory. Maybe they will have better spatial abilities than the females. And so it will depend. In a lot of these tasks with the guppies, for example, we tend to use females more than males, also because females are more food motivated. So whenever is a task with the goal of getting food, the males are not so interested. But if you make, for example, a maze or a task where once the male gets there, he has access to a female, then they are very excited. So there are differences between the sexes, and that's mostly linked to their behavior and to their motivations. So sometimes they are differences based on their ecology, and sometimes the differences are because of the design. So if you use a task that has food as a reward, maybe your conclusion is that males are really slow or dumb, but they are not. You're just not giving them the correct reward. So thank you.
That's good. That's really interesting and funny in some ways. Did you notice much of a difference between the species you have studied doing your researches, like a species that can learn some ability like counting the objects faster than other than the sharks, maybe something like that?
Yes, there are some differences between species, and as I said, again, this links generally to their environment. So species that live in very stable environments that don't change a lot, they don't need to rely on learning so much. because things are always the same. They can have fixed behaviors. Whereas if an environment is more dynamic, then some species will show better learning abilities, and then it also depends on where they live. So, for example, there's a lot of work on sticklebacks that live in rivers or ponds, and for example, the ones that live in the rivers that are very fast flowing, where the rocks and everything is always being moved, these fish don't have very good spatial learning abilities with regards to memorizing landmarks, because there's no point in memorizing there's a rock there, because tomorrow the rock is not there anymore. And so, yeah, you do find differences between different species and populations in different abilities. But again, now we know that it links back to either their environment, physical environment, or their social environment, and for example, with predation. So we are now looking more and more as to what explains these variations.
That's amazing. Thank you again. We didn't have any questions on the comments on YouTube. So I congratulate you for all the work you have done. It's pretty awesome. And
Thanks.
we're going to take a little break, like a 10 minutes break, and we'll be back with the Meet the Plenary, where we're going to ask you some questions more personal and about your path on the field. So you can share with us how is it been. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank
See
you
you in a
very
bit.
much. Welcome back. So now we're going to start the Meet the Plenary session where we're gonna ask you some questions and get to know more details about your path on the research field. So first I wanna ask in a general way, what are the most difficult parts you found on in being a scientist and a researcher?
That is a difficult question. Uh, I think now what I find more difficult is how to balance my personal life with my professional life, jumping from a very short term contracts. And Well, my husband works in a company, so I don't want to move countries so much anymore. So for me now, that is the most difficult part. When I started, in the very beginning, during my master's, for sure, it was English, learning how to write papers in English. Then, because I did my PhD in Australia, I learned that part quite fast. I moved on also to learning how to get grants, so how to write the grant applications. But I have very good training on that as well. And I think now the biggest challenge is really how can we work normal working hours without burning out, and how can we find a career, get a position if we don't want to be moving around so much. I think now those are the biggest challenges. Maybe you identify also.
Yeah, a little bit. We're engaging in this area, so we know it isn't easy at all. Also, do you believe it's harder for you as a woman? And I'm asking this because here in Brazil we face a lot of prejudices and also sexism in this area. So, do you believe you find that in other countries as well?
Well, yes, it's tricky, but I think globally, yes. Me personally, I think I was very, very lucky that when I grew up in a very supportive community, and at my university, I never felt anything like that in Portugal. Um, and when I went to Australia, also my lab was very supportive, and I think we were half 50% women, 50% men, and at the university as well, a lot of women were PIs already leading their groups. So I globally, I think I was in a very supportive environment. I had some not so great experiences in the Netherlands, but my boss, my advisor, he was really supportive. So it was more of the technical staff. We were working with the aquariums, and so the technical team that built the aquariums, they really didn't take me very seriously and these kind of things. But luckily, I always had a very supportive network, and by luck, and also a bit by, I think, choosing the right people to be in, my network, my supervisors and my colleagues, good friends. So I I am maybe one of the very few that I don't think I was very impacted, but I've heard many, many stories, and I know it exists. And we see that also in salary sometimes, and there's still a big gap. And in hiring policies. I think now, depending on the country where you're trying to work in, maybe now things that many countries, especially here in Europe, they are trying to change this. So I think now is a good moment to be a woman, because they are really trying to take this seriously, and they are really trying to give opportunities for people from less favored backgrounds and women and minorities, which is really not the situation we are seeing, for example, in the United States. And I think Brazil suffered a lot, especially with Bolsonaro, probably. Um, I think it depends also a bit on where you are. And I think sometimes also just finding the right labs. It's not just the country, but it's also the lab and the PIs. there's a lot of stories now coming to surface of advisors that had power relationships or sexual harassment stories also in the workplace. So I think for us, we really need to be careful when we, in our career, when we are searching for a potential job or a potential lab, to really try to talk to the people that have been in the lab to see, is it a lab where no one stays there, or is it a lab where someone did a PhD and then wanted to stay for a postdoc? Sometimes these small things, a bad lab, people don't stay there. Everyone tries to go away. So if it's a lab that has a lot of rotation, there's a hint that something is wrong. You can also try to contact people to get some stories. Contact not only people that are in the lab right now, but people that have been in the past, because if they're not there anymore, maybe they have more free voice to tell you some things. And and try to choose not just from the publication record of a lab, but also try to see what kind of culture they have. To see, especially for women. This applies for everyone, but especially for women, to see if you are lucky to be in a community that will impact you a bit less on these things.
Yeah, I made a topic. I know I made that question because I know it's a sensible topic, but I believe it's important to talk about. Uh, as I said, here in Brazil, we are really affected by that. We heard many, many stories of amazing women that gave up because they're underestimated, because they have suffered harassment because of the gap salary. And we're happy that this kind of stuff didn't affected you because your job is amazing.
Thank
Um,
you.
the next question is not that sensible. I wanted to know if you have always been interested in ethology and animal behavior. I'm a veterinary medicine student, and I think it's a really fascinating area of study. So, when did you think like, I'm gonna follow this way and I'm gonna work with ethology specifically?
Yes, very early on. I think as a kid, my family, we would watch a lot of documentaries on animals, like on the TV, the Portuguese national TV. After the news on the weekend, there's always a nature documentary. So as a kid, I grew up watching them quite often, and I really liked them. Um, but I think I grew up not so much thinking I wanted to work in ethology. I wanted to work with sharks. So as a kid, I had an obsession for sharks. So this is what drove me into studying biology. Um, and that's why I did an undergraduate in biology in the University of Porto. But then in my master's, I knew I wanted to work with sharks. But then, the topic of ethology really appeared more in my master's. So when I did my undergraduate, there were a lot of different disciplines. I knew I wanted to work with sharks, so I started to look at what different types of work. So there were genetics, population genetics, and a lot of people working on tracking of movements as well. And so for my master's, it was more an opportunity to join a research group and to work on satellite tracking. So they were putting tags on sharks in the Atlantic, and we were tracking their movements. And then it was a lot of data analysis, a little bit of field work. So I didn't see a lot of sharks actually, which was disappointed. But then it was a really good experience, and then I really started reading a lot more about the what did we know about sharks and what we didn't know, and that's where ethology came through. So in my undergrad, it was a topic that I already liked a lot, and then I realized that there were a lot of things we didn't know about shark behavior, especially in terms of learning abilities. And also at the time, I was lucky in my master's that I went to an international conference, and I saw a talk of someone talking about shark learning. So it was social learning, and it was super cool. So of course, I went and talked to that person, and later on, when I was searching for PhD opportunities, I thought about his talk, and that was something that I would like to do first. So I tried to think strategically into two things. What did I really like, and what was something that almost no one was working on, and so I could kind of become an expert on that. And so this is where the two things aligned, and I decided I really wanted to work on shark learning. And then I went to Australia a little bit by luck. So I wrote to this researcher that I met at the conference, and I asked him if I could join the lab. But at that time, they didn't have any positions. But he did some work in Australia, and so he recommended that I contacted Colin Brown, who then became my PhD supervisor. So, yeah, I think there was a lot in me that was passion, and then also a lot that was reading, discovering what I wanted to do, what space was in the field for me, and then also networking, really important. A lot of opportunities that I had were through people that I met in conferences. A lot of friends that I have as well are people that I've been meeting in conferences. So, yeah, networking. Everyone says this, but it is so true. Yeah.
That's really true. Networking is something that is really important for you to get opportunities in every area, not just in ethology. You kind of answered the next question because you said you really liked sharks as a kid. So that was one of the things that made you choose the ethology of fishes as a line of research, because that's not really common. I don't think I don't see many researchers of fish ethology. So you saw that there were gaps of the knowledge in the fish behavior, and you decided like, I'm gonna be the one that gonna explain that why that happened. It was kind of that you.
Yeah, it was that. It's also, I really like doing field work and being out watching the animals. I like diving and swimming a lot. So this for me was a logical step in combining my passion for sharks and for being in the ocean, and then also everything that I really liked about ethology and about cognition and behavioral ecology. So yeah, it was very nice to combine that. And in Australia, um, my lab, my Colin Brown, my PI, he's a really big name in fish cognition. He wrote many books. He's always appearing in interviews. So the whole lab, everyone, it was a big topic already. And I think, there's is maybe something, a topic that is not so well known in the community in general, but with people that work in behavior nowadays, it's not something that is so new nowadays. And there's quite a lot of labs. There is a lab in Brazil. They work on fish behavior and cognition. There's labs. There's many labs in Europe. There's in Germany, in the UK, some shark labs in the US as well. In Australia, there's a lot of people working on fish behavior and cognition. So it's not so new anymore, and which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's evolving pretty fast. Even the medicine of fishes, it's evolving. It's increasing the number of studies in the area.
Yeah, zebrafish are now used a lot for medical research. And this is because fish have a lot of common aspects of their development, of their brain, and of their behavior. Also, many conserved functions, many conserved genes, and so you can look at effects of medication or effects of contaminants on fish. You can look at cardiovascular diseases, and zebrafish, because they are transparent and they grow from eggs, you can really control. So yeah, they are becoming a standard model system for many studies. And from my perspective, that's also why we should look at their cognitive abilities and we should look at their welfare, because the way these fish are kept sometimes in those labs, in tanks that don't even have a plant or sand, and it's a very sad life for them, I think.
Of course. Now I'm gonna pass the word to Julia if she has any questions for you. And thank you for sharing so much with us.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Catarina. I'd like to recover your last answer about the welfare of fish, lab fish, actually. Um, I'm currently doing research on rodents, and in Brazil, I know that worldly welfare is something that's been highly discussed, because historically we've evolved a lot already, but we have so much to do in that aspect still. In Brazil, we face a lot of I guess gaps in the way we treat rodents in laboratory still, because I mean, we are veterinary medicine students and we see those animals as patients, and sometimes that can differ a lot from the view from every other area professional sometimes. So that difficulty on implementing and having better ways of ensuring that welfare in mammals is already a challenge, and I cannot like take that to the fish area. I can believe that that can be even more difficult. But my question is not really about welfare, but we know that the field of behavior and cognition of animals can have some patterns of study, right? So what are the aspects that make studying fish behavior unique or even exquisite in your view?
Yeah. So I think fish are really, really cool to look at different behaviors and cognition because, well, first, when we say, for example, you are talking about rodents and then you are talking about fish. And in fish, we are including more than 30,000 species. So when we are thinking about fish, there's many different fish. They come in different sizes, in different social organizations. They live in different environments, and a lot of cool research can be done. For example, the tasks that I shown here, they are visual tasks. No, we tend to study species that live in shallow areas that have colorful males, and we are visual. Humans are very visual, so typically we run visual tasks. But there's really cool studies, for example, with blind cave fish, looking at how these fish can count because they can sense objects. So you can put like Lego pieces or something like that, and they can count from. So fish have a lateral line. So fish have different senses from us as well. They have a lateral line. So there's a line on the side of their body that feels the movement of the water. And so this is how they can still have a sense of where they are even if they can't see. And so, for example, these blind cave fish, they approach these objects and they can count if there is like 3 Lego towers versus 6 Lego towers, for example, and they don't need to see. So fish are really cool group to look at also different modalities, learning abilities in different modalities. There's fish with electroreception. Sharks have magnetic reception, so you can train them to find the batteries that are buried in the sand. You can train them to different electrical stimuli. So it's really cool also to think about cognition from dimensions that we humans don't experience. And because fish are so diverse, there's many different groups with different habitats, ecologies. and sharks as well, it's really nice then to have an ecological perspective. So to really compare what were the evolutionary drivers for some of these differences, if we look at not only at their phylogenetic history, but then also at the ecological niche where they live and what are the factors that are driving these types of variations. And I think fish are really cool because of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So going probably for our last question, what is or are the most intriguing gaps of knowledge of fish behavior that you look forward to study or you wish to be deepened by the scientific community?
Well, I think one of the main gaps is in how much we know. So again, this goes back to how many species there are. So when I say that the field of fish cognition is not new, we already know a lot about this, and it's been 30, 40 years that people have been studying fish cognition, and it's not a surprise anymore, or it should not be, that fish are smart. But still, when I say this, we're talking maybe about 5 to 10 species that have been looked at. And when we say sharks, we are talking about 2 or 3 species, maybe one stingray, a freshwater stingray. I think they exist in Brazil as well. So I think one of the main gaps is still looking at different species and really seeing what are the extremes. So maybe some fish are really smart, but it doesn't mean that all of them can do this. The same as, if an alien came to Earth and they analyze Einstein, he doesn't represent the human population, So I think we are missing a little bit, scanning a bit more, looking at different species, and I think this is, for me, the biggest gap. And not purely research, but for me also the biggest gap is that so many people don't know about fish cognition, and in a way, I tend to say it's surprising, or that I'm really excited and it's amazing. And the way also I gave my talk in showing, like, do you think they can do this? Oh, I'm going to surprise you. They can do all these things. But at the same time, I kind of wish that people were not surprised anymore. Why is it surprising that would fish be the only vertebrate that cannot learn? And with so much research that has been done, why doesn't the public know more? That there's these myths of 3-second memory, and then we have Dory that forgets everything, and then these myths kind of propagate. And this is, I think, something that is also lagging a bit behind. Is fish need a bit more public relations, and so. But I think. The research community in this topic really tries to talk to the media, and people give a lot of talks, and there's some newspaper articles, but it's slow to really reach everyone.
So, Dr. Catarina, to finish, I've just come up with another question, but how can you, as a postdoctorate and someone who's highly evolved directly with the behavior field, how can you let me search for the right word. How can we just a second.
You can say Portuguese, maybe?
Eu poderia falar em português. Oh, meu Deus.
Sim.
Eu totalmente, I totally forgot. All right. Como a gente poderia trazer, né, o papel do behaviorism, do field of behavior, diretamente para a área de conservação ambiental? Como você enxerga, né, como especialista do assunto, a forma, assim, de maior impacto que o entendimento da cognição e do comportamento animal de peixes pode ter na conservação deles.
Uhum. Respondo em português ou em inglês?
However you want.
Well, maybe I will reply in English. I think sometimes because of my accent from Portugal, I've heard it's sometimes difficult to be understood. Yeah, I think well, in the with fish specifically, there's a bit of work done already. For example, with the case of social learning, so how they learn from each other. So in some fish species where the populations in the wild are depleted and they try to breed them in aquaculture and then they release the fish. Sometimes this is done just because fishermen want more fish in some places, but other times this is done for conservation purposes. And what happened a lot was that they grew these fish in hatchery in captivity, and then they release them in the wild and they die because they don't know how to feed, they don't know who are the predators. And so, for example, social learning has been used a lot to improve the survival of these fish. So you can train some fish with live prey, and you can train them with to be afraid of predators, and then they spread this knowledge to the whole population, and you don't need to be training all of the fish. And globally, I'm not sure about a lot more specific examples with fish, but I know behavior is used a lot now in terms of conservation, also for prey species. For example, with biological invasions. So, for example, in Australia, there is a big problem with cane toad invasion. So, is these big toads from the Americas that were introduced? I don't know the name in Brazil actually. Is bufo. Is one of the big un sapo grande.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
And they are they have these glands. They are toxic, and they were introduced in Australia to try to, because they wanted them to eat this beetle that was destroying some crops. But now these frogs are everywhere. They are a pest. And what's happening is a lot of Australian species are eating these frogs, for example, snakes, and they die because these toads are poisonous. So now they're using also social learning to train, and these toads also eat the babies of some endangered mammals. And so there's a lot of, again, social learning, or just learning exposure to small doses or to smells, and you can train a small subset of a wild population, and then this behavior will spread. And sometimes also for managing wildlife conflicts with humans. Sometimes this type of learning associations with danger are used in, I think, in some countries also to try to avoid animals to enter some areas where they should not be. Maybe there's a road and they're going to be crossing the road and being killed, or if there's a village. And so you can train the animals to associate a certain sound or something with danger, and then you can try to prevent them from entering an area. So yeah, more and more I think behavioral knowledge is being used for conservation, but yeah, there's a lot more that we still need to do.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
We're highly, I mean, I'm surprised of how much we were discussing. And like, firstly, we had like 4 questions. They were already big questions, but as we got on, it just also spread to others areas. So thank you. I wish we can have probably more opportunities to discuss those things. Our community, of course, is being greatly impacted by your knowledge and the way you were so clear, and even how can I say it, Alice, didática.
Obrigada.
Uh, yeah. So, yeah, that's it. Obrigada. Thank you.
Não, obrigada a vocês também. Obrigada pelas perguntas e pela oportunidade de também partilhar o meu trabalho e o meu percurso. E
Yes.
sem qualquer dúvida ou qualquer coisa, podem me contactar. Se
Thank you.
conhecerem alguém interessado em fazer trabalhos na área, também à procura de projetos, podem me pôr em contacto.
Perfect. We for sure do. All right. So, guys, we are moving to how do we say it? Intervalo, right?
Break?
Break, yeah.
Thank you so much. To a break, and we're coming back in probably 15 minutes.
Tchau.
Bye.
Alice, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
I stay. I come back in 15 minutes.
Yes, Hello everyone, again, we're back and we're gonna begin our roundtable that will be counting with the members of the organizing committee of this event to share some of the experiences that we had during the process of making everything happen. So I'm gonna add Dejanira to the stage so she can lead the talk.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here today for the roundtable. My name is Dejanira. I'm a PhD student at Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, UNAM. And today we are going to, I would like to welcome you to today's roundtable, behind the scenes, organizing the 4th International Student Conference on Animal Behavior and Cognition. It's important to note that conferences like these are crucial for early career researchers like us, yet the work that goes into them is rarely discussed. So today we are here as the organizing committee to discuss the challenges of hosting this event. Let's begin with brief introductions and a description of your roles in the event.
Oops, I was muted. And Camilo, can you start introducing yourself?
I don't know if he could hear you.
I think he's frozen, so maybe Julia, start, please.
Yeah. So my name is Julia Vasconcelos. I study veterinary medicine, and during the organization of this conference, I was responsible for communication services such as email replies, also from the scientific, how do we say it? Commission, right?
Yeah.
So also in the scientific commission, we were responsible for dealing with the works that we received. Also Instagram divulgation and other stuff like that.
My name is Alice Silva, and I'm also a student of veterinary medicine at the Universidade Federal de Alagoas here in Brazil. And during the organization of the 4th ISCABC, I did pretty much what Julia did. We worked with the marketing promotion and communication, with the attendings, with possible partners, and all of this stuff.
Camila, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of what you did during the organization?
Okay, thanks. Okay, I am Camilo Medina. I am a master's degree student, finishing my master's degree at Institute of Ecology at UNAM, Mexico. And I find support and try to find financial support. And okay, I evaluate the works that you presented in the flash talks and some of the plenary presentations that you see. And I think these projects are important because actually that's how the science works. You need to organize with other scientists to give a promotion of your work and try to find some people that is interested because it's a kind of auto promotion. Okay, well, I think you are the people that be with us are the most important of all the Congress, because if you are not present, okay, this doesn't have sense, because we are trying to give us to know your work, who you are, and what are the challenges of animal behavior around the world.
Thank you. Let's just start at the very beginning because conferences don't just materialize. They required a lot of hard work. And so please tell us, how did this start? How did those initial conversations look like? I think,
Me.
well, whoever wants to go first.
Thank you. So the previous organizing committee reached out to all past attendees via email, asking if anyone was interested in continuing the conference's legacy. A few of us responded, and we were invited to an informative session where they explained the responsibilities and the timeline for this event. From there, we formed a team, and at the beginning, there were quite a few people involved, probably over 20. However, as the months passed and the workload became clearer, many had to step back due to time constraints and or other commitments. Eventually, we became a smaller, more focused core group that stayed until the end, and here we are.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting at first, but also a little overwhelming, I think. I personally haven't had participate or organize something of this scale, an international event, only regional or national. However, once we began dividing the responsibilities and establishing timelines, it became more manageable, and we learned as we went going.
Would you like to add something, Camila?
I think I would like to add that some of most challenging part of beginning a congress like this is to find financial support because animal behavior actually is a very little community around the world because is this idea of animal behavior is a sub area of biology and it's difficult, no? I think one of the another thing that people that would like to introduce in animal behavior and try to express what are their interests field work is to find the idea that you are not alone, no? But generate this kind of spaces is challenging from the beginning because when you need to focus in the topics that are around the world, you try to find some people that work that topics and is accessible for be presented. But in spaces like this, we try to generate a kind of space that you feel welcome to propose new ideas, no? Because it's important to because the science is normally dogmatic, no? So try to find students that have more fresh ideas in this kind of space. Uh, it's difficult to find new people, but if you are welcome, no? So I think is the only thing that I want to add.
I also would like to add that what helped us too was that we didn't start it from the scratch. The previous team that organized the third ISCABC left behind some documents and informations that gave us some structure to work from. So even though we had changed many aspects with our vision, it helped us and guided us the way.
And also from the very start, we knew we wanted to actually the conference to be student led and globally accessible. That idea shaped our decisions from the beginning, from the tools we would use to how we recruited volunteers and built the program also.
Thank you. So it began with continuity and collective initiative. You picked up We picked up the baton from the previous team, made it your own, and kept the event alive. That's an important reminder that successful events often rely only on generational collaboration and a willingness to jump in, even when the task seems daunting. So let's talk about challenges. And I know that there were many, many challenges. Organizing a conference is complex enough, but doing it as students and across different countries and different time zones probably adds layers of difficulty. So, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and how did you deal with them?
Well, I think one of the biggest logistical challenges was coordinating across different time zones, as you said. Our core team was spread over at least 5 countries, so finding a time to meet that worked for everyone was an ongoing puzzle. And of course, tech was another major hurdle. But adding to that, we can think that the fact that we are students and we have a lot of responsibilities towards those, um, you know, aspects of life that require a lot of time also, that was something that can be considered in terms of um, finding the right time to meet.
Yeah, from the academic side, I believe that one challenge was ensuring fairness and consistency in the reviews of the abstract, because we had students submitting from different places of the world with diverse educational backgrounds and varying his levels of access to researches. So we had to be intentional about developing clear, inclusive criteria of the review. So ones that value ideas and clarity over polished English or fancy graphics,
Right.
for example.
I think one of such challenge was the use of digital tools because you need to be an expert in few time of some tools that you are not ready to to work. But this is one of the best parts of do a congress in online because the idea is that some people or some students maybe if even the event is presidential they don't have access for the flights or the money to live in another country even in a visit for I don't know 2 or 3 days but you do the best that you can do in that moment.
Um, I'd add that maintaining high student engagement was a challenge, especially in the early stages. We had to convince people, sometimes even ourselves, that this conference would happen and be worth attending. It's easy to underestimate the amount of work that goes into creating promotional materials, email campaigns, social media content, and ensuring everything feels student friendly, not overly formal.
You've all touched on some really important structural barriers, and one of them, of course, is funding. So, can any of you speak more about the difficulties that you encountered securing financial support for the conference?
Absolutely. I believe funding was one of the most significant stressors through the entire process. And we began reaching out to potential sponsors with previous months in advance, including universities too, and NGOs, journals, and even local businesses here in Brazil where the event would happen if presential. And most of them either declined it or didn't respond it at all. And many people hear the term student conference and assume that it has little impact. So it was really challenging to convince them otherwise.
And the problem isn't just getting money. It's actually the timing. Some institutions have long bureaucratic processes, and by the time they're ready to approve a grant, the conference is already over. We needed support up front, and that was rarely available.
I think one of the most difficult parts of knock doors and try to find some sponsors is that a lot of people maybe they support you in the last conference or last congress, and maybe you think that they could be interested in support you again, but the idea is that maybe it's not the time and they don't know how much they are going to be the benefits of support you. So that's the trouble. You need to combine a lot of people that probably you are not looking any time in your life, but you are only the tool that you use is the main, no? So is to have confidence that is going to work. And I want to thank Company of Biologists to support us.
Yeah, it was pretty humbling, honestly. We spent hours writing proposals and tailoring pitches and making budgets, and most of it didn't lead anywhere. But when we did get even small amounts of support, it made a huge difference. And the financial support was really what made the event be strictly online and not hybrid as it would be.
Yes, I would also like to add that unfortunately, we had some expenses at the beginning, and we couldn't actually work. We didn't actually have any money, so we had to pay upfront. Fortunately, later we got the money and we were able to reimburse ourselves, but that was not something that was that cool. Um, anyway, I appreciate everyone's honesty. It's a tough reminder that organizing a conference isn't just an academic task. It's also a financial project management, and yet you pulled it off, and that's something to be proud of. So let's shift gears a bit. Looking back, what are some of the most valuable lessons you learned, either about organizing the conference, collaboration, or even about yourselves?
Um, I think one big lesson for me was the importance of over communication. When you're working across time zones and with rotating team, assumptions can lead to big mistakes. So we had to learn to be very clear about the deadlines, responsibilities, and expectation, even if it felt like we were repeating ourselves at some point.
Yeah, for me, I learned that perfection is the enemy of done. We spend a lot of time worrying about uh, whether every detail was good enough, the program design, the email phrasing, the poster templates. But in the end, it was more important to keep things moving on, and we had to trust that our best was good enough, especially with the limited time and resources that we had.
Um, I think I know we actually left topic behind, but you need to support with integrity because, for example, since the beginning, when sponsors start to don't answer your mails, you need to support until the final because that's the idea of make a conference. Nothing is going to be perfect. I talk with a professional organizer because I have many doubts of how to do a conference. In this case, I have an interview with a professor that he was the president of uh, the National Herpetology Congress in Mexico. And it's always troubles. It's not going to be perfect. The Congress are not going to work well. No one, and in any time, it's something that you have to challenge and accept and continue, because if you don't make the Congress, no one is going to do the Congress for you and promote the topic that you are interested or are you focused on.
I guess I also realized how important it is to make room for different working styles. Some people love spreadsheets, others need visual tools or verbal check ins. Finding a rhythm that worked for all of us took time, but it ultimately strengthened the collaboration. Right, Alicia?
Does anyone would like to add anything else?
No.
I guess not.
Okay. Well, those are powerful takeaways. It's easy to forget the skills that you develop behind the scenes, like communication, problem solving, and adaptability, are just as valuable as any research presentation. Now, let's be honest. If you could go back in time and change one thing about how you organized this conference, what would it be?
Um, so I would start the fundraising process much earlier, that's for sure. I guess that's something that we take from this event to every other. I guess that's one of the big steps that can be earlier done and can ensure security to the whole process of um, organizing an event. We underestimated how long it would take to get responses and how many of those responses would be no. If we had begun sooner, we might have been able to keep the hybrid format and or support more participants, I guess.
Yeah, I would like to add that I would build in more buffer time between the key deadlines. We were constantly racing against the clock with reviewing abstracts, finalizing schedules, and sending emails. All of that in the same time and in the last minute, and it worked, but it was pretty exhausting, and it didn't leave room for unexpected issues.
Um,
Sorry.
no,
Go.
you can go. It was just a comment. I can do that later on.
I think as a member of the last conference, I think in so many ways, but maybe our strongest point is also our weakest point in the organization, because the idea of this symposium conference, sorry for the change of names. Since the beginning, the idea is, for example, when it starts in Japan, some people of Canada were the second ones, and after the second ones, some Mexican girl was the chief of the third conference. But the problem is that we have a very big change of members. So the maybe you win experience in this conference, but you are not used this that experience again, no? And the trouble is that you don't improve your abilities, no? And it's always a new people. Yeah, that's our weakest point, but it's also our strongest point, because we keep auto-gestive, yes, and we can do. Organize as we can. And actually, that's a very good and strongest point, considering that we are international. So we need flexibility. But I don't know. I don't know how to change that. But it's an observation that I look at, because other conferences have in general a president, three vocals, and social network management. And I think I would like to change that, but I don't know how to reorganize that.
So as I was adding, if I could change one thing, I'd invest more energy in onboarding new volunteers. When people drop out, they dropped out. We had gaps in the workflow, and a stronger system for training backups or distributing tasks might have made the process smoother and less stressful for the core team.
Yeah, I believe that we could have tried to find better tools for the collaborative work earlier. We used a mix of platforms like email, Google Drive, WhatsApp, Telegram, and sometimes some documents got lost in the where it was. So I believe that having a unified and structured workspace from the start have saved a lot of time and confusion in the way.
Thank you. Those are pretty good. That's excellent advice. Not just for future organizers of this conference, but for anyone that leads team project. I think it's really easy to overlook the importance of structure and pacing when you're focused on the big vision. Now let's check if there are any questions from the audience. I don't think there are questions, but I do. I would like to ask you something. So, are you planning on staying for the next organizing committee?
Julia, do you like to answer first?
Follow the order we were
Yes, the presentation.
doing before. I think so. Yeah, I believe that the opportunity on participating in this event on the organizing committee gave me a wider point of view on behavior and cognition studies in general, and I guess that developed on me a necessity and even the curiosity to be involved in further projects and bringing other people and finding out from the inside other ways that we can connect those knowledge and spread it in the format of conference.
I would like to add that the only way to know what happened with the product that you have, because have a congress is a product of try to create a community, is to stay in. So I say yes, I would like to participate again in this kind of spaces.
Yeah, I believe I would like to participate as well. I'm an admirer of the ethology area of study. I believe it's pretty awesome. And I, with being a part of this organizing committee, made me develop some abilities and improve my English and get to know a lot of researchers that are doing amazing jobs. And the networking is very important. So I believe yes, I would like to be on the next organizing committee.
Welcome, Lupin. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sorry for everyone for arriving late. I had some technical problems, but just complimenting what you guys said, being a part of this team actually also developed my English, not only my English, but also my organizing skills and learning how to contact other people, other professors and early career students and researchers, and creating this whole network is what made me want to continue doing this work. And I like for those who will come next to feel the same way I felt during the whole program and this whole 2 years that we did it, and did this in general.
Well, I would like to add that I would also like to stay on the organizing committee if you allow me to. I think at the beginning it was really complicated to actually stay focused because we saw that it was like so long. We were it's like, oh no, this is going to happen in 2 years. That's a lot of
Yeah.
time. We have a lot of time to do this, and then suddenly we had like a year
Next week.
and 3 months, and it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would also like to add that we needed to contact the we relied a lot on the information of the previous organizing committee, but they kind of just told us, okay, this is yours now. You do whatever you want. And we kind of needed a little bit more guidance. Um, but I understand that they are now all doctors and they all have their own responsibilities and they didn't want to stay like in this thing. But yeah, I think there is some things that we needed to start a lot sooner that we didn't do. And I think that's it. Anyone else would like to add something like something that you would like to say to everyone that's maybe listening to us or seeing us?
Perfect.
I wanted to say thank you, just not just to who's watching, but to all of you guys. It was really a pleasure to work with you, and that's
I would like to follow Alice's thanks, especially the three of you. I mean, because I'm gonna leave Lupin out of it. Then I'm gonna talk about her. Alice, Camilo, Dejanira, and Lupin. I guess you were very, very. How do I say it? Like so.
uma mãe, né?
Yes, a mother. But not only that, you're so kind to reach to divide with us, me and Alice, presentially, this opportunity and experience. So I thank you individually for that. And I also thank you for the way you communicate needs and the way you are so kind in
Patience.
patient in a lot of ways. I guess it's something that personally something personal that has a great impact on you professionally, and I wish that all of us can take great things from this experience. And that's it. Thank you. It was nice meeting you also. So for the future, we're here.
You are going to make me cry. And I want to thank you. I don't know. I know we don't know in person, but maybe someday. I hope in another edition of this. This is the second edition that we are online. Oh, okay, this kind of congress because the first was in pandemic in Canada, and I don't know. We hope that this idea is that this is going to grow up in a network and contacts. But I don't know, maybe it's not going to happen, but I'm going to stay even if the final, if the end is not to work, but I'm going to stay. Thank you for all your work and your patience. Thank you so much.
Well, I would like to echo everyone's sentiment. I think Lupin was one, she was our leader. We never gave her that title, but she was our leader. Um, And I think it's really cool because at some point I actually kind of stepped out of the organization because I was just having a lot of work to do on my PhD thesis. And I think that happened to all of us at some point, but not to Lupin. And that was really amazing. I think you did a fantastic job in keeping us together, in keeping us glued, and in getting this conference to be what it was. I don't know if you want to add something, Lupin.
I thought that she was going to cry when she turned her camera off.
No, just that someone entered here. But yeah, basically, I want to thank you guys, everyone, for not dropping out at least, and for staying with me, sticking with me to the end. That's really amazing. Yeah, I was overstimulated a lot of times because of all the work that I had to do, but I knew that I needed to do it. I knew that it wasn't something that I could just give up, and that's why I stick to it, and I kind of like try to get all of you motivated and try to. I might not be very experienced with this whole, and a lot of times maybe I overworked myself because I didn't know how to express myself. But I thank you all for being there. And that's it.
Thank you, everyone, to all of you and to the people who are still listening to us, if there is someone. Thank you for sharing your stories, your insights. Thank you for your honesty. And what we've heard today is a reminder that a conference like this don't just happen. They required a lot of work from students and from people who care deeply about creating spaces for learning, for connection and growth. I think you've shown us that leadership isn't about having all answers. It's about showing up, adapting, and supporting each other through uncertainty. The fourth International Student Conference on Animal Behavior and Cognition was a success because of your dedication, especially Lupin's, and because you weren't afraid to learn along the way. To those in the audience who are thinking about organizing something similar, or to join us in the next or, ISCABC, know that it's possible. It's challenging, yes, but it's also deeply rewarding, and you won't be alone. There's a growing community of students like you, like us, ready to build the future of science together. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you everyone for being here. And I hope we can see each other again in the next conference.
Thank you so much.
Next conference.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.